Happy Thursday, friends. Welcome to another edition of the Thursday Mystery Wine Blind Tasting. Who is fortunate enough to be tasting this little red with me this evening? Or I should phrase that better, shouldn't I? Who am I fortunate enough to be tasting this lovely little red with this evening? We have an absolutely beautiful day here, and I'm super excited that we have a whole house full of wonderful guests. Had a tremendous day meeting with some folks and potential candidates for our kitchen team. And now I get to cap the evening off with a little red wine and my favorite folks in the Mystery Wine Blind Tasting, Field and Maine tasting community. I was telling some folks earlier about this tasting and they hadn't heard about it. And so they're gonna potentially join in with us, I think next time we do that, which will be toward the end of August as we take 2 weeks off. But this community still is growing and developing interest, which is just, I think, a marvel. Reflecting back over the little bit that we've been doing this now, just over a year, it's tremendous to see how many people have created relationships beyond this tasting group, have come in and dine with each other or share information and share wines and share ideas and visit other wineries together. It's just a special thing. And so thank you to all of you for that. Jan, happy Thursday to you. And Lauren and Craig, always a pleasure. Thank you for joining us. And Tran, hello. And Allison with David, Candy and Kathy and Kevin are here as well. Ooh, this one's changing quite a bit. That's my third smell. You've just seen I was pouring it as I went live, but it is changing and growing. Any initial thoughts, guys, as you're putting your nose in this? And we'll go through the process, of course, but developing that second sense, that innate sense that we've been formulating. And that's the beautiful part about developing a craft, right? You do this practice over and over again and to the point where it becomes muscle memory, or in this case, taste memory. And that taste memory might tell you something right off the bat. It's creating linkages almost faster than a very intentional thought process would. It's doing that quicker. So you learn how to catch a ball and your hands out, wait for the ball to come in, ease back, and you don't end up thinking that way every time you catch a ball once you've gotten proficient at it. So most of you now are so much more proficient at this tasting, and many of you brought a great proficiency to the tasting, which has helped all of us. So relying on that proficiency isn't the name of the process, but it is a key part, I think, in your own tasting to use, as we've talked about in the past, just to benchmark something in the beginning, like, is this what I'm thinking it is? Because this is what my reflex is telling me. So Craig, you're saying it's intense with clear ruby. Yes, I thank you for that. And Jan, some intensity to it with wood smoke. I agree with the intensity. And Jeff, you actually get to join us. You have to take a vacation to be able to join us, which is awesome. And I'm glad you are at the Chesapeake and that the wine got to go with you. So thank you for bringing that. And Kelly's with you too, I'm sure. J and K, Jeff and Kelly, perfect. Cheers to you guys. Hope you're enjoying a beautiful night on the Chesapeake. David, you're picking up cherry, an intensity, some wood, some smoke, a deep color from the Swanbergs. Agreed, a real deep color. There's a powerful cherry smell. I don't think we would be back into Australia, but there's this sort of GSM, Grenache, Syrah, Mourvedre kind of profile that hit me right off the bat and is now morphing into other things, that cherry element in particular. Some red currant for Craig. And Sharon, hello. Jan and Bobby are here too. Oh, fantastic. Everybody's joining tonight. That's great. The Millettes are here. They're just in the other night celebrating some birthdays. Their daughter has, how would you put it, Nicole? She had a yearbook and like a little clue. They had this kind of clue page or something that they were supposed to try to figure out who said what, and their daughter said, "My favorite restaurant is Field and Maine," as her clue, and giving people a hint as to who she might be, which is pretty amazing. 10, 11-year-old saying her favorite restaurant in the world is Field and Maine. She's got amazing taste, impeccable taste. So, and Chris Pearman, is here also celebrating a birthday recently, his 60th. So cheers to you, Chris. What a wonderful evening we all got a chance to have. And now you're just tasting salt and lime. So I think tequila would be in your glass. And that's not a bad thing either. Trish, Andy, and Kathy are here. And Chris and Courtney brought us with them all the way to Michigan. They're up in Traverse City and the surrounding areas there, I think, on their family vacation, which is awesome. I got a chance to visit there just recently, and it's a really cool place. That part of Michigan is just so beautiful. The lakes up that way, crystal clear water, beautiful sandy beaches, and just not as much heat. It was spectacular. Jan, yes, jammy. I agree. Back to the wine. So there is a jammy part. There is sort of that Luden's cough syrup, cough drop, where you've got candied cherry and a medicinal note to it in concert. So this jammy element, a little bit of an herbal quality. Great. All right, so nose character, let's go back to the visual. Clear, intense, right? It's more on the ruby side of things, right? What are you picking up, guys? It's a richer, more robust profile here. It has a substantial amount of leg formation. They're there and they take a moment. They're thick and then they sort of sheet down the glass and then sort of the last minute form a leg or a tear. They are big, to use Candy's term there. Yes, they are big legs. So some higher alcohol, and that kind of echoes what we're smelling in the wine, right? And by way of that ripe fruit, that jammy fruit, again, linking ripeness with potential alcohol. So if something's very ripe, it has more sugar in the grape, that sugar can be transformed via the little yeast guys eating that sugar up and kicking out more alcohol and a little bit more CO2. So we're looking at a potential for high alcohol here and a warm climate. Generally speaking, that's what this wine is showing us right off the bat. And something that's made with a varietal that has a thicker skin, a little bit more richness to it. So to put a contrast to that, right, we're not thinking this is Pinot Noir. The cherry note might also mean Nebbiolo or Sangiovese, but it's not showcasing itself in terms of a lightness of color that way. It's headed more in that Grenache, Syrah, Mourvedre, or other varietals, and I'm not pinning it on the GSM, but that was just a note that I had thrown out earlier. So, good. So, a little bit of a smokiness too that Jan earlier picked up on, and that smokiness would indicate perhaps a little bit of maybe the soil type, perhaps a definite usage of oak, and so I'm not getting a whole bunch more. There's a hint of that smokiness and a tiny bit of a spiciness, maybe a pepperiness in the back end of the nose. But let's taste it and verify what we can about all of what we've just talked about on the palate. Jeff, you're getting evergreen. Cool. Great descriptor. It's the real benefit to tasting with more people is their descriptors help to broaden your own and to single in and focus your palate on what might be that you don't quite have the word to describe. Evergreen is nice. Erica, no worries, just happy you're joining. All right. With that first taste, it's challenging, but if you can condition yourself, try to focus on the taste of it as opposed to the flavors of it. And I know the flavors explode and you want to note those things, but is it dry? Where does the tannin sit? Is this a light, medium, or robust wine? Thus indicating kind of an alcohol quality. How high is the alcohol? Where's the acidity at on this wine? Craig's helping us with that by saying it's dry and it's pretty acid. So you're giving it a medium plus, medium high acid quality. We were anticipating some high levels of alcohol, and I'm getting a little bit of, for me, right at the back of my throat is where I'll feel a little bit of alcohol, almost as it's kind of like a heat warming up the back of my throat, coming to the apex of the curve in my throat and the esophagus there. And this has a little bit of that. Once you're into that phase, right? So medium to high acid, I'm still salivating. To pay attention to that point of acidity at the end of your sip, under your tongue, around your mouth, on the sides of your tongue in particular, are you still salivating? And does this have that kind of real pronounced quality, or is it relatively flat and not quite as bright or vibrant? I think it has a pretty high acidity, medium plus for sure. I mean, there are things that are probably higher acidity in the world, but it has a high acidity. Jeff and Adrian, I'm not sure who threw that one out, which of you, but Bernarda is a really cool idea, so let's put a pin in that idea. We'll come back to Bernarda. Jen saying nice heat, so it's got a little bit of warming quality, so it's got a little higher alcohol. Is this a light wine, a medium wine, a robust wine? Is it a skim milk, 2% whole milk situation? Last week we threw in almond milk, and the nut milks make their way in there. I'm not entertaining the fact that this might be oat milk. Okay, we're going to leave that out. Grain milks, we might lobby to add a nut milk, but we're not adding grain milks into our descriptions. The graphite, Jeff is saying, leads him to Bernarda. That's great. But in terms of the texture, and this is where the acidity too doesn't help, makes it more challenging to kind of determine weight, because when something's completely high acid or medium plus acid like this one is, and it cleanses the palate after you've had it, it makes it feel a little less robust. I think this has a pretty good approach. It has some warmth, so it's medium plus body weight, right? This is not a super chewy, super full, super robust wine, but it is definitely closer to that than it is a light wine. So it is certainly not light. It has a robustness. It is jammy. How about the tannin here? Is there a level of tannin? Are you getting that drying, sort of astringent sensation of tannin here? Jeff, I think your descriptor is perfect there. Easy tannin, they're fine. So they're, instead of them being kind of bulky or chewy or blocky, they are fine. And fine and elegant means they lay on the palate in a way that's there, they're present, but they kind of dissipate quickly. Think of a sheet of kind of confectionery sugar that you'd put on your palate, and that just would dissipate quickly. That's kind of what's happening with these tannins. David, you're picking up less fruit on the palate than on the nose. I like it. Thank you, Jan. Throwing out Malbec or Grenache blend. So we've got Bernarda and Malbec, South America. Grenache blend, numerous places, which we can come back to. Not a lot of tannin, which Swanbergs are picking up on too, or echoing the previous comment. So yeah, this is not a super tannic wine. So something like Malbec could have some powerful tannin, but it could be made in the lighter style. Wavra could have a bunch of tannin, right? Something like Tannat might have a bunch of tannin. So Bernarda would be a cool wine to consider. I've had some that are pretty tannic and rich and robust and rustic. This has a bit more finesse to it, but I've had one or two others that could be a little bit softer. Nicole, I don't know about Pinot. I think it doesn't have a tannin profile. It has a tannin profile more similar to Pinot, but it has a body weight that's a little bit richer. The cherry does not match up though, but it's coming from a really ripe place. So is this Pinot? I'm not sure. I initially said no based on our appearance, right? And everything we were finding out about this wine, that I didn't think it was Pinot Noir. I don't know that you can rule it out. And if you're playing the Chris Shirley game, this is sitting in a Burgundy bottle, so it could be Pinot Noir by that. It is a little richer than I think we would find for Pinot Noir, but if this was a really ripe place, so if this was, to use an example, I don't know that this would be that example, but a Central Coast, Central California kind of Pinot Noir, something with some warmth, maybe, but I'm tending towards something else. So what other varietals should we be considering, guys? Grenache blend, a Malbec, a Bonarda, something. There's that fir, piney element. Jeff, when you're tasting something that has that kind of fir, piney note, is there a wine that usually presents that to you? Something that you immediately go to because of that? Jan, thank you. Yeah, Oregon or Washington State. Clear meniscus, not tawny. Yep, thank you, Craig. That's great too. So heading back toward the visual, which is telling us what? I shouldn't say it. Craig, what does the clear tell you about this wine? Chris is picking up eucalyptus, and I am too. I was kind of waiting for that one. Let's see if anybody else picked it up. But I agree, there's a little bit of wood and eucalyptus. So a cab blend, and maybe we're talking, again, sort of eucalyptus coming from California, eucalyptus coming from Australia, maybe we're talking South Africa. It's becoming more prominent for me, that eucalyptus-y element, and that kind of, which I think the fir note is evolving more into that for me at the present moment. The Cabernet element, this is soft, and we kind of just, but it's got a heat now, and the heat is moving from the back of the throat all the way up to my lips and kind of the front of my tongue. I think a blend is an interesting idea for sure. I think there's a number of us kind of thinking that. So would we have sort of a Chilean Cabernet situation? Bonarda being a potential for Bonarda blend. The herbal is definitely coming out, much more so now. Could we be tasting something like a Grenache blend? I'm kind of wondering about that. Acid, heat, light tannin, fruit, Eastern Europe, question mark. Direct quote, Jeff White. Acid high, yes. Heat, so you're getting the acid and you're getting the warmth in the fruit, which is interesting. So that's more of an indication, less of place perhaps, and more of the varietal itself that will maintain high acidity as it gains this fruit profile. Or we're talking about a blend of something that has high alcohol potential and greater warmth blended with something else that has a bunch of acidity to it. Maybe it's one varietal coming from multiple sites where you're getting a different character of a higher elevation site for the acid and a lower elevation site with warmth. It's a softer wine per the Swanberg's note, and I agree. But there are some notes. Wow, cherry cough syrup just keeps jumping out with that menthol element in the back. This is a wine that fixes all that ails you. This is a medicinal wine. It has that softness in the palate with the warmth of the alcohol surrounding it, and then it has some of these rusticy notes and more pronounced, sharper notes, I should say. Ooh, Persian food with this would be tremendous. Yeah, I agree. Like that. Some, yeah. A Bonarda Malbec blend is a cool idea. I like that a lot. Just because I think, one, we haven't done it, I don't think, and so it would be a nice way to call something pretty special. Erica, I 100% agree. When winemakers join this, it makes it all the more fun. They have such a precise palate. It's awesome and helps a tremendous amount. So I know Jeff White often does this, but often does this, I think, with his team on a time when they can all do it together as opposed to the evening. So I'm delighted you could join us tonight. What is Bonarda, guys? Bonarda is a grape that you'll find in South America. that has a general profile, and if someone wants to look it up, you're certainly welcome to add to this, albeit minimal description, but that the thick-skinned, darker varietal that gives you some power and some richness, generally speaking, could be a little rustic, but I think as with many things where it might have been overcropped and not quite as focused a production as a quality production might yield, Bernarda gets to be more interesting as it is tended with lower yields and cared for more. And so I think you could get some of the characteristics here, much like a lot of the varietals where they're a little bit more obscure, having experience with a bunch of them and having a spectrum of experience with Bernarda is difficult. And I'm not someone who would be able to tell you I've had Bernarda more than a dozen times, and it's far less. If you're leading toward Malbec, what about this is telling you Malbec? And why? So Erica, you were leading Malbec. I think Jan, you were leading Malbec. The Swanbergs were throwing out Bernarda Malbec. Why Malbec? Is it because of the texture? Is it because of the aroma? Because of the alcohol? What is it about this that you would say is Malbec? Chicken with plum sauce. Yeah, that would be lovely. Really lovely. Like a lamb with, sumac on it, and oh yeah. Candy, you're in Italy, and or I should say, Kevin is in Italy. Pardon me, by way of Candy's note. And I was just pondering that in the back of my head. Italy, Spain, because you've got warmth and the potential for alcohol, and acid. And Jeff threw out Eastern Europe. We didn't kind of close the loop on that, but so would we be talking about something like Blaufränkisch? Would we be talking about sort of a Merlot blend from out in Eastern Europe that has high alcohol, high acid, a riper, warmer year? Plum in both for the Swanbergs. That's why they're headed toward that. Plum also is a great indicator for Merlot. Aroma is Malbec, says Jan, and it finishes clean. The menthol element is often a huge tell for me for Australia, so I understand that call. Cut, which is also Malbec, from the central part of the Loire Valley, from Craig, yeah. Tempranillo. Oh. Thanks for that wrinkle. Yeah, Nicole, cool. Stephen. So a softer kind of Tempranillo from somewhere in Spain, or maybe we would pick up its variant in Portugal, but I'm not getting super raisiny elements. And Erica, you're not picking up any eucalyptus, huh? There's a bunch of mintiness, eucalyptus-y kind of menthol-y note to this. Not minty, but more that menthol-y element to me. That medicinal mint. Australian Malbec, that would be a pretty cool left fielder. It has a profile like some of Australia. It has a higher acid. So like we had that blend right from Howard Park, right? We had the Howard Park wine, which was out sort of Western Australia, and it had that high acid. It had some ripeness. It had that coastal influence. That would be pretty neat if we were drinking another one. How about South Africa too? South Africa could give us. Erica, yeah, that's probably at 2. For me, the delay, it hit, I guess we're 24 minutes in. It hit at 15 minutes or so. The eucalyptus kind of came out. There was a piney fir kind of tree element in the background that then moved to the foreground and replaced that tree element more with a eucalyptus-y element. And it's still real present for me and getting more so. A Tempranillo blend, so I don't know about Rioja. I mean, I think we would pick up more of an oak signature perhaps, but could come from a different place in Spain and have Tempranillo there. And there are many, many places where that could come from. I don't recall any particular place in Spain that I would get menthol or that mintiness, and so it takes me more to Australia. Maybe there's an indication of that in a couple of vineyard spaces in Argentina, and thus you'd pick up that Malbec and kind of Bonarda or a Malbec element. There's sometimes a blue floral note and kind of a blue element to Malbec that I'm not getting. And the high acid, for me, I think, yeah, it's kind of that high acid, the warmth, and that eucalyptus. When you put that together, for me, that's a question of where in Australia you're drinking wine. I think on the vintage side of things, as Jan's prompting that question, it is young, right? So going back to the point about the watery meniscus, it has that watery meniscus, but that, and not tawnied, and so it's showing you that, which indicates that it's more on the youthful side of things. But also that watery meniscus is an indication oftentimes of an alcohol content that's a little bit higher, and I think that's here for sure, which for that reason, plus the sort of medicinal fruit note, that candied medicinal fruit cough drop note, and then that menthol element puts me comfortably toward Australia. And it's not just that smokiness and that kind of little bit of pepperiness is not super prominent. There isn't sort of a cocoa note, so it's not like for me Shiraz, but it has some of that, and thus it could be the blend that we were talking about before, a blend. And as I noted in the beginning, my initial gut when I put my nose in it was that it was ripe Australian Grenache blend GSM, so Grenache Syrah Mourvedre, or as they call it, Mataro, and I have tried myself to get away from that, to try to prove that wrong, and I keep coming back to it, especially as the menthol element has come out. And so, cooler site. So I don't think we're talking about, a Barossa Valley GSM blend. If we are, then they have some hillside. I don't know. Jan, you went back to New Zealand. That's an idea too. There's some Syrah for sure in New Zealand. I don't know much about Grenache from New Zealand, but I'm not sure what else we could be certainly tasting as a blend. You could have Cabernet blends there. You get some of that high acid. I don't know about the same warmth of character, but I get that medicinal element coming through. So maybe we're a little bit more coastal, and certainly coastal influenced Australian. For me, Grenache Syrah Mourvedre. Jeff and Kelly, you're out. Thank you so very much for joining us. Glad to have you this evening. Hope you enjoy the rest of the wine. This is, let's see. We didn't really do Old World, New World, but we did by de facto kind of just settle in on the New World. I think everybody was, by way of what they're talking about the New World areas, and then hitting on a little bit of Italy, hitting on a little bit of Eastern Europe, hitting on a potential in Spain. So we're kind of split that way. An Australian Malbec would be cool. I don't know anything about Australian Malbecs, and so there's a chance that it would be that. Okay, so Malbec for Jan, maybe more West Coast Malbec. Swanbergs are probably still on Bonarda and Malbec. Some of you are in Italy, some of you are in Spain. I can't move away from Australia. It's just there's now a sweetness in the sour fruit and the medicinal quality. Yeah, I'm Grenache Syrah Mourvedre, Australia, 2019, 18, young, 2 to 4 years old. for sure. Um, yeah, that's it. For me, I can't really go anywhere else. I think that's where I'm headed. Anybody else have anything else they want to argue for? I think it's New World for sure too. If it's Old World, it'd be really neat to learn that lesson. But Nicole's saying that I like Spain, tastes like something I've had before. That's good. That's always a great thing to go with. Chris is going Cab Blend Australia. So Cab Blend, Cab Shiraz could be a Cab Shiraz blend from Australia rather than the Grenache Syrah Mourvedre. They make those certainly, and they make them well. So let's see. All right. Well, there we go. So this is what's so cool about tasting with you guys. Los Compañeros. This is a Shiraz Tempranillo. So Nicole, Stephen, you got your Tempranillo. This is Shiraz though. It's a blend. It's from the Clare Valley, which is high elevation valley above Barossa. So you have really bright acid and ripeness coming from here. How cool is that? Yeah, 85% Shiraz, 15% Tempranillo. So Nicole, you nailed, Nicole and or Stephen, you nailed having a little bit of Tempranillo in there. That's really great. It tasted like Shiraz to me a little bit, but not enough to just be Shiraz. And it comes from Pikes, which is a good producer up in the Clare Valley. Their Riesling is delicious, super racy, high acid. And that's where, I mean, the Clare Valley's got an indication there of just this high acid profile. How cool. I mean, Jeff, come on. Fooled by a Shiraz Tempranillo? Yeah, you can go around saying, yeah, I got fooled by a Shiraz Tempranillo. I don't think anybody's going to give you a hard time. You walk on water if you say, I think this is a Shiraz Tempranillo. That's not something we know of. But the Shiraz element, whew, really cool. This was Australia to me because of that eucalyptus note, because of some of that herbal, medicinal cough drop thing. But it wasn't as super identifiable as being just power. And it, despite it having what felt like a higher alcohol, and the alcohol on here is, I'm having difficulty finding it, excuse me, 15%, no, pardon me, that's not it. That's the amount of Tempranillo, 14%. So it's a robust wine in terms of its alcohol content. It has a high alcohol in it if you feel it, but it wasn't so aggressive that it was distracting from the rest of the wine. I think it's a fun wine. It's super tasty, and for those of you that have Persian food, chicken and plum sauce, I hope you enjoy it. It sounds tremendous. That would be great. This is a great little wine for a perfect kind of wine that we talked about with respect to summertime, where it has richness, robustness, roundness, but it's not so heavy and it's not reliant on big tannin for that weight. That would go well with all kinds of things summertime, things that you might otherwise boost with heat and having this kind of heavy richness that you might take into a grilled state as opposed to a braised state, a room temperature state, a patio temperature state, and have a fun, quaffable, high acid, refreshing white red that you still get the experience and the joy of having a bigger red that keeps it bright and vibrant. This is perfect for that. So who knew Tempranillo and Shiraz, but Tempranillo blended. Wow. That's a reference point for the future and a fun wine. Kind of developing a little tea note now. Black tea. That's great. It's evolving. Sharon, Jeff, and Adrian, Jeff and Kelly, thanks for joining us. Chris and Courtney, Erica, thank you for all of you who have helped our wines travel the country and elsewhere and continue to play along. Thank you for those of you that are here in town playing along too. We are, as a reminder, closed, or not going to be closed for the next 3 weeks for the restaurant, but we are going to take 2 weeks off from this. So next Thursday and the Thursday after, and then reopen that 4th week with respect to this tasting. And we will have the Thursday, the final Thursday there. We have some wines for that ready to go this week and for the weeks after that. We have quite a bit all the way through October, actually, for those of you that want to pop in and just pick up a few wines. You can do that this weekend. We are open and closed. We are open on until Sunday, and then closed Monday all the way through September 1st. But I'm in and around, so if you want to shoot me a note at some point, you can. And if you're in need of something, I can probably swing an appointment for you. But until then, have a great couple weeks, and I will catch up with you in that 4th week of August, where we'll get to do something else in the mystery world of wine together again. Until that point, drink with each other, have some fun, and let me know how things are going, what wines you're tasting that you're enjoying. Always interested in hearing what you're finding out that way, and we'll go from there. Jeff, climbing? Yes. Let's try to figure out a time. It would be the time to do it. So happy to try. Cheers, everybody.